Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 170. What's really wrong with the school system from the eyes of a millennial? Now, today, I have a very special guest, probably the best guest I've ever had in my whole life, and that is my daughter, Emily. Emily is here today to talk about some of the things that have frustrated her as a student, and we're going to talk a little bit about things that we can learn from her experience and really reflect on the things that we're doing and see if there's something else that we can do. When we have students like Emily basically fall through the cracks, we know that something isn't right. Something isn't right. That's how I felt as a teacher and a mom. Not only did I feel like, I don't think I did a great job as a parent, because you do that when your kids don't end up taking the path that you think they're going to take. But I felt that way as an educator. I thought, I have spent all of her life caring and working and just dedicating myself to other people's children and wanting them to fall in love with learning and thinking. But my baby, what happened to my baby? Well, we're going to talk about that today. Hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, so that was a little bit of a heavy introduction, and I think I told you a couple weeks ago that I was going to get real with some of these harder conversations in the month of May. And so this is one of them. This is definitely one of those conversations that make us stop and think, or that at least it made me stop and think. Now, I have to tell you a little bit about my sweet, beautiful girl. She is just a highlight in my life, and I love her dearly. Now, Emily has always been a kind of a perfectionist and also a super hard worker. And she cared about school. She cared about doing well. She worked so hard. She was also a kid I didn't have to worry about a lot when it came to school. Like, she always knew what she had to do and she took care of it, which did not pave the way for my son. Oh my goodness gracious. If Emily had homework, Emily did it, and Emily would do it until it was finished. And sometimes I'd have to actually make her stop doing it because it was so late and she needed to go to bed. And now there are times that I think back, there were some signs that she struggles with dyslexia that I didn't necessarily notice. Now, I noticed it really quickly with my son, and with Emily, I didn't notice it. And I feel like that was unfair because I just, she compensated so well for this that you just didn't see it. It just looked like she had to really work hard at things. And when she had a really good teacher, she did an excellent job. And so she did well in elementary school, and she did well on standardized tests. And for the most part, like, the only thing that really should have been a trigger was how long it took her to do things sometimes. It took her a long time to get things finished. And again, when your brain is overcompensating for an area that doesn't perform like an atypical brain, then it's bound to cause something to happen here or there. And that is definitely what happens with Emily. Now, as I said, she was a great student. She went on through, she, took honors classes. She had a 4.1. She was graduating in the top 10% of her class. She took AP courses. She did all the things. Like, she was on the track. We paid for a Florida prepaid college. Like, she was heading towards college. That was the goal. That was what she was going to do. And then she took the SAT. Now, in the state of Florida, unfortunately, we haven't caught up to what a lot of states are doing, and that is making that optional or not looking at that so heavily. But we do in Florida, and we really did when Emily was going through school. Now, Emily had just turned 22, so it's been a little bit of time now. But she did average. She had an average score, and she knew that it didn't matter what she did. And we did a lot of the extra stuff for SAT. It didn't matter what she did. She wasn't going to be able to make up for the time that it took her to do things. And because she was never identified as somebody that needed a 504 or possibly an IEP, she didn't get extra time. So she didn't get a level playing field. And it was very discouraging for her. She didn't want to take the community college route. She wanted to go to Florida State. She wanted to, which we were a Gator family, so that was a big enough adjustment. But she felt frustrated with the system that had kind of let her down. Because she was such a hard worker and so well behaved and quiet for the most part, she slipped through the cracks. We didn't notice that she needed additional help or that she needed any kind of accommodation whatsoever. And so that test score and not being able to go where she wanted to go and not being able to do the things she wanted to do really frustrated her. And oh man, wait until you hear how some people responded to the fact that she decided that she wasn't going to go to college. Now, I talk about this a lot, and I think it's episode 24 about her choice not to go to college. And we'll talk about it today as well. And you may be thinking, because I was right there with you, you may be thinking, wait a minute, there's other ways. You could still do it. And that's the answer. We all have to go to college. All we care about is college and career ready. Oh, my friends, I feel like we've been brainwashed a bit with this. There's so many other paths. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well today. So let's get to the conversation I had with my millennial. So I'm so excited and honored and proud and just extremely blessed to have this special guest with me here today, my daughter, Emily. And she is here, and we're going to talk about some of the issues with education as seen through the eyes of a millennial. So, Emily, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm also honored to be on this awesome podcast hosted by a wonderful human being.
Oh, well,
I'm a little biased, but
That's very sweet. And I'm nervous too. I feel nervous as well. Emily has been on, you've been on this journey of life with me for 22 years, but Emily was not only obviously in school. I taught where she went to school. So from the moment she started in kindergarten, we were not together when she was in pre-K. That was her very beginning schooling, but she did start kindergarten at the same school with me. And not only after she left the school and went on to middle school, she stayed and was a helper in my classroom. So she would, because middle school started a little bit later. The first middle school she went to, it was just a quick walk next door. And so she stayed and helped for a little bit of time. And then when she changed middle schools, her school started even later, and she took a bus from my school that was like a hub. And she stayed and she worked in my classroom for a long time, like all the way until I left the classroom. And even when I left the classroom, she then worked with who was my partner in teaching. Like she worked in her classroom. Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah. I worked with Miss Redden.
Mm-hmm. So she hasn't just experienced it as a teacher's daughter. She has experienced it as a person who has stayed in with kids and watch the ins and outs and behind the scenes of teachers. So her perspective is actually much richer than I would say being, just the child of an educator. So
Yeah.
so let's just start with first of all, introduce yourself a little bit. Like tell us a little bit of your journey. I did say in the intro that you were on the path, like a student path. Like you well, your goal was to go to college and you had, aspirations of doing really well in school, and you worked really hard. You did very well. I think we missed dyslexia with you for sure.
Mhm.
And you were at an unfair advantage in some sense because of like time constraints and things like that.
Mhm.
Where so like explain a little bit about yourself and then we'll go from there.
Well, so you also, when you were saying like where I get like my perspective from, I also am now a VA. So now I see it from the business standpoint of teachers who are not in the classroom too, who have like some of which have been so hurt and burdened by the education system that they've decided to leave and do the parts of education that they love. So I also have that
Yeah.
perspective as well as the student, the daughter, the teacher's aide kind of. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess I would say teacher's aide. So there's that as well. But yeah, I mean, from the beginning, I mean, I think as long as I can remember when I was in kindergarten, I always like, I'm gonna go to UF. Like I'm gonna go through school and I'm gonna go to college and I'm gonna get a degree and get a job. And that was, I mean,
And
that
go to
was how it
University of
was.
Florida. UF is
Yep.
University of Florida, and VA is a
Yep.
virtual assistant, just for your information. Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Yeah.
go
I'm
Gators.
using short
Yeah.
terms. Yep. Go Gators. And then I guess like I never really specifically knew exactly what I wanted to do. Whereas some people like go into school, they go through middle school and they always say, oh, you need to know like what you're going to major in. And then you go to high school, oh, you need to know what you're going to major in. And you need to go to college. There is no like other option. It's just you go to college and then you get a degree and then you're successful. And if not, then you're a dropout, you have failed, you can't succeed. And those are all things that teachers told me when
Yeah.
I was in my ending years of school. But I was on that track. I was a straight A student. I had like a 4.2 GPA, like had like 400 and something, like ridiculous amount of volunteer hours. Like I was striving for bright futures. But then when I took the SAT and ACT, which I took one of them multiple times, and then the other one I only took once because after that I knew I wasn't going to keep taking it. But all three times that I took all those tests, they were the same score. I didn't get anything higher, nothing increased. So I think that's kind of when I knew like I'm trying my best, but like it's not good enough for this system. And I remember like coming home from that and coming to you and being like, I failed. Like
Mm.
I didn't do this. Like, and like it makes me emotional now because
Yeah.
it's like I didn't know like what I would do
Yeah.
because people told me like, well, if you don't go to college, you're gonna fail. And I even remember I took college classes.
Yeah.
In high school. I took college classes. I took ENC 1101 and ENC 1102, and I took dual enrollment dance, and I took AP biology, and so like and these teachers told me, well, like if you have to keep trying, you have to keep going. And I'm like, but I did keep trying. I
Yeah.
went and I tested and I tested and I tested, and it's the same up to 1 point. And I'm like, I don't know how to do any better than that. And I remember writing an essay at the end of the year in my ENC 1102, and it was about like how to be successful or like what your definition of success was. And I wrote a paper on how I didn't believe that you needed to go to college to be successful. Like that, I thought that for me, that I wanted to be happy. And that was my goal of success, that it didn't matter what it looked like job wise. And it didn't matter if I had a degree or what piece of paper I could hold in front of me and say, I did this. It mattered that I was happy with where I was going, and that it wasn't about like being super rich or whatever. It was just that I was content in what I was doing, and I felt like I was following my passion. And I got a B on that paper, and I remember asking the teacher, like, why didn't I get an A? Like, I have all of the things from the rubric that you had given us. Like, I followed what you asked me. I was like, well, I just think that, like, you're gonna fail if you don't go to college. So, like, and I'm like, but that's really a huge bias that you're using to grade my paper on. Like, when I followed everything else, I'm like, was there anything else wrong? He was like, no, I just think you need to rethink your topic. And I was like, well, I don't think I do. I'm like, I think you need to rethink your thinking if you're going to be teaching students.
Wow.
And he didn't really have anything to say to that because he was so close. I mean, he was a college professor, so he believed in college.
Yes.
And I'm not even saying that I don't believe in college. Obviously I don't want a doctor who's going to treat me who hasn't been to college. Like,
Yes.
I want them to have that knowledge, but it's not for everyone. I think that was a really big, like, play in me knowing that the education system had failed me in particular. And if it had failed me, who had tried really hard and cared so much, that it was absolutely failing the kids who struggled and didn't get the attention that they needed.
Yes. Yeah, that's huge. That's upsetting. It's upsetting.
Yeah.
So do you, before you move any further into that, I have a question about, like, where do you think that pressure comes from? Or why do you think teachers, and I don't think all teachers think that you're a failure if you don't go to college. But did you feel that from home? Did you have that, that pressure also from home as well?
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to answer honestly, because if you were someone I didn't know, that's what I would ask.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that pressure came from a variety of sources?
I would say 100%. Yes. Like, that it came from everywhere. But I think that it definitely came a lot more from dad, who my dad did not attend college. So which I think is common. Like, I've talked to people before who are like, they tell me, they're like, yeah, like, my parent didn't go to college, but they're very adamant about me going, which seems so backwards. But I think that a lot of the times, like, obviously, I mean, maybe you agree or don't agree that sometimes parents want the things for their kids that they didn't have, which can be a good thing. But at the same time, like, you have to step back and look at the perspective of, like, what am I really wanting for them if it's not what's best, if it's just what I didn't have versus what they should have, So I think that was definitely a play. I mean, like, I was always told I was going to go to UF. Like, we were a Gator family, so, like, that was a thing. And then even when I decided I wanted to go to FSU, which is Florida State University, the rival school, it was like, that wasn't even acceptable. So to not to you were excited about that, but so I think it was home. I was also, like, some of my friends at the time, they were like, you're not going to college, like, then what are you going to do? Like, work at McDonald's, which, like, was always the insult, that I was going to work at a fast food place, which, like, also shouldn't be an insult. Those people work very hard every day as well. And also, McDonald's has a really great program to assist you in going to college, just so everybody knows. But so it was administration. When I talked to them, they were, like, very upset that I didn't do dual enrollment earlier on, which I was adamant about not doing for mental health purposes. So, like, that was a huge other thing that came into play. Was mental health was always, like, I tried for it to be my priority, even when, like, it was very low, like, on the priority ranking for others. So I think there's just so many different elements that, like, everyone doesn't pay attention to, especially in the school system, because as a teacher, like, you're being pressured to have your students get this perfect score. Like, nobody's looking at the student themselves. They're looking at the number, and they're looking at the grade, and they're looking at the grade point average. And that is really, really sad, because there are smart, incredible, like, capable, talented students who, like, they can't get straight A's because of something else, or like maybe they don't have the tools at home. Like they're less fortunate than others. And even like I think of Jackson, my brother, your son, for example, like he is so smart. He's really good at statistics and math, and like is very talented in like talking about film, which is like a hard thing to like grasp for some people. Like he has those talents, but I mean, he dropped out when he was 16. And I think I think that was the right path for him, but I think the school system failed him in that way because everybody saw him as like, he has ADHD, like I'm sure, and he has dyslexia, like he has all these things that people didn't pay attention to help him better, like go further within his education when he definitely could have. Like it's not that he didn't have the smarts or the talents or like even the drive. Like it was that like when students like him needed the words of affirmation to keep going and he didn't get that.
Yeah.
And like I was the kind of person that was like, if somebody's going to tell me I'm going to fail, then I'm going to prove them wrong. But obviously not all students are like that. And then when you tear them down, they don't want to keep going after that. I'm going to fail. Okay. I'm going to fail. That's it. So like, I guess it's disappointing from all aspects to know that like people said those things to me, to Jackson, to so many other people and students as well. And I have friends now that are now graduated from college and they're like, I don't even know why I wasted my time and money doing this. They're like, I'm so proud of you for like owning your business and stuff. They're like, you're so much further than I am. Like, I don't even know like why I went to college. Like Jake, my boyfriend, like has his AA. It means nothing to anyone.
Yeah.
They want experience now. But then when he goes further down the line, they're like, oh, do you have a college degree for what? Like what now I need it when I didn't earlier. So it's like very much like everything is out of sorts in my opinion. Like nobody has a clear like version of what it really should be because they're too busy looking at numbers and papers and whatever instead of like the true person behind all of that.
Yeah. And that's a tough pill to swallow. Like as a teacher, as an educator, as someone who spent most of my life, supporting and encouraging and wanting more for students. Mm-hmm. It's hard to hear that sometimes we get lost in those numbers and those scores. And it all sounds to me when you step back from it, like it's a systemic issue. And not only is it's a part of society. Like we feel that way, what we value or what we say we value. And we're very, contradictory. Like we say we value education. We want people to go to school, but we don't want to make it obtainable. Like it's so expensive and we want people to go into debt. And then we say that's the only path, or you're going to work at McDonald's. Like those are the only two options. Yeah. And there's no other path that a person can take. And I think that is completely wrong. And you're right. McDonald's does have a program and there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. And we have a lot of people that are really hard workers working in underpaid professions. And which is a whole nother aspect of it. It's like, I did go to college. I did get a master's degree and my master's degree means basically nothing in the state of Florida. And that's difficult. I couldn't even make up enough money to pay it back. Like, so that's another portion of it. So it's just it's a unhealthy system is what it feels like to me. And I do remember, and I will share like that aspect of like, I remember having those goals for you, like wanting you to go to college and thinking that, college was the answer. College was the answer. I almost feel like I was brainwashed for a long time feeling like that, but also because I truly enjoyed going to school. Yeah. Like I love learning. You love learning. Like I wanted kids, my own children, and also the children that I had the privilege of teaching. I wanted them to love to learn. I wanted them to think, and I wanted them to wonder, and I wanted them to care about that. And also when I got my master's in 2011, that was one of the best experiences of my life. And so not financially, not emotionally, even from, home, but
Yeah.
in so many ways, it filled me up. And I would want that for other people. But I remember when you were retaking the test and we were waiting for the score, and I was at a technology conference, and Sir Ken Robinson was there speaking, and he was talking about people finding their element and finding the thing that they were really good at and that made them really happy, and like making a living doing that. And he talked about how, we were misguided in thinking that the only path was college and career ready, and that we didn't have to think like that. There were so many outside of the box, occupations and things that we couldn't even imagine in the future. I mean, I never dreamed that there was a thing such as an influencer. Like I didn't even, we couldn't
Yeah.
have imagined that that was even going to be a thing. We couldn't have imagined that people would get paid to play video games. It's just so unbelievable. But I remember him saying all these things, and I was like, I just felt it like in my soul. And I was like, I loved him. Like I adored him. He's one of my education heroes. Unfortunately, he has passed away, but I think he's really on to something. He talks about our system needing a complete revamp. And I'm like, where are people like him to carry on? Because I think he was on the right track for sure. And so when you called me at the conference and told me that, and I left early. Remember, I was like, I've got to go home. I have to be home. And I remember driving the whole way home. And my initial feeling was like dread. And then just a quick instant later, it was like I had this very calm peace come over me. And I remember the words that he had just spoken, like literally days before that. And I thought, no, this is okay. That is not her path. She's meant for bigger things, greater things. I've never have doubted that about you. I've never doubted that you were meant for big things, and you're a light in the world and you're meant to shine. I've always felt that way. So I didn't have any fear that you were going to be a failure or that you were going to be a dropout or any of those horrible things that people say about, people that don't continue the path that they think they should. But I remember feeling like this is going to be okay. And I'm going to help her know that it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that day like so clearly, like getting that back. And it wasn't my test scores that I got back. It was the rejection letter from FSU, because that was my only, like I had applied to UF and I got accepted virtually to like UF online, but like for the summer. So like I wouldn't have been able to go like as a camp counselor. So it was like basically like this is your only way in, because like you didn't make it into like actually being accepted, which like was a different kind of rejection. Was like, you're not good enough to get in at this level, so we'll just like kind of accept you here. So like in my mind, I didn't want to go there anyways at that point. So then I had applied to Florida State University, FSU, and they had like a program where like if you didn't know what you wanted to do, that you could go through different steps. So that's why I was like, this is where I want to go. And then when I didn't get in, I got the email. I was sitting in my ENC 1102 class, and I was like, I asked my teacher, I was like, can I check my phone because this is the time that I'm supposed to get the email. And I opened my email and it said like, we regret to inform you. And obviously I didn't read the rest because I didn't need to. And I like stood up and I didn't even ask to leave. I just walked out of the class, which I never did. I've never done that like before. And nobody questioned me. I just left and I just walked down the hall and I started sobbing. And I was like, I didn't understand. I was like, I wrote this really well formed like essay. That's what I was like, this is going to get me in, because they're going to look at this essay and they're going to see me as a person. They're not going to see the test. And I was like, nope, they proved me wrong. And I was like, I mean, I was devastated at the time because I was confused, but it was a God thing. It was God being like, I'm telling you, this isn't your path.
Yeah.
And I was clearly ignoring him at the time, but then I went a different direction. But I also want to say too that like I agree. Yes, it's a systemic problem, and that I had some incredible teachers that like taught me in ways that like mattered.
Yeah.
Like even like I can remember like my elementary school teachers, like Miss Sergi or Miss Minner. Um, and like those are two teachers that I clearly remember like caring about me like as a person. And Miss Ligman, who like I'm still in contact with now, who cared about me, about my mental health first.
Yeah.
She saw me as a kid who was struggling, and sorry. And she called you, and she made sure I was okay. She didn't, I mean, obviously she cared about my education, but she saw me as a person first. And like I think that's where it's hard, it's sad, because I think when you become a teacher, that obviously you become a teacher for a reason. Like you love learning and you want to share that with children in like a special way, but then you get brainwashed into this different way of thinking, because then you're told you're not good enough if your students don't perform a certain way. And that's not fair, because it's similar to how you think of like, it sounds like an exaggerated comparison, but like think of like a dog and an owner. You don't see a dog as a bad dog until they bite someone, and then you're like, oh, it's a bad dog, but you're like, no, the owner didn't teach them to not bite. But then and then you think of a teacher who is a teacher to begin with, and then the system tells them to do something else. They tell them to bite, and then they bite because they have no other choice. They have to make a living, and this is what they thought they were born to do. So I don't really think that there are many bad teachers. I think there's a bad system that puts them in a bad position to, and there are some teachers who have moved away from that and been like, I don't care. Like, I don't care what the system says. And they're like the divergence of teaching. But like, it's hard to do that still, even when you do that, because you get in trouble or you risk not being able to feed your family. And that's not fair. So, I mean, like, there's so many things that are just like wrong. But like, I think like if I could go back and tell myself something, I would say like success doesn't look the same for everyone. Like, and that's one thing that you said where you were like, you love to learn. Like, I love to learn too. And I am currently learning. And that's funny that we both say that, is that like when I had to make my senior project, that I said I was going to the School of Life because we had to mention what college we were going to. And that's so true, though. It is like I am constantly learning something new every single day, because I'm learning how to run a business on my own. At I started at 21 and now I'm 22. Like I didn't learn that in school, and I am now learning how to do that. I'm learning how to interact with different kinds of personalities. I'm learning how to do things online. I've learned coding, for crying out loud, which like I didn't know how to do that. So I am in the School of Life, and there are some people who are at a university and they're learning in that way, and that's great for them. But there are just different ways of learning. I think that's the key, is that there's no like, you did this so you're more successful, or you did this. It's just that one thing is different than the other, and the differences are what are important to accept. Not, you don't even have to completely understand each person's differences. It's just understanding that everyone is going to be different. It's not going to be a cookie cutter look, and that's where we're failing severely as a system in education.
For sure. And you know, as like from the teacher's perspective, you're told that you have to do that.
Yeah.
Like you're told that everyone must be on the same page at the same time. And you're told that everyone must have their objectives on the left-hand side of the board or whatever. And you're told that you must use this particular curriculum or this particular curriculum supplement or material. in order to reach this, whether it works or not, whether the student is lying there on the floor crying hysterically because they don't want to do it, you're told you have to. And so that demoralizing mentality is going to eventually, if not right away, impact the student. The student is going to feel that. They're going to feel the ramifications of that type of fear-based leadership. And it's so wrong. So let's talk about some of the things that you think are wrong. And then I want to talk about some of the things that you think are right, because you do have an interesting perspective. And one of the main takeaways that I have already witnessed just listening to this is how different it has to be for so many different people, and how we have to take into account personality and social and emotional learning and mental health and people, and looking at these people and seeing these students. Like when you just said that about they were going to see me, they were going to know me from that essay. I'm like, how many kids don't feel seen? That is actually, when I stepped into a role as a student support specialist at a school, I struggled. But one of the things that I feel like I did well with those kids was that I saw them and they knew it and they saw me too. And that made all the difference. And it makes all the difference, but people don't see it right away. And that's the thing that's sad about it. But I won't go on about that. Tell me some of the things that you think that we're doing wrong.
I think, well, even just what you said too, like about being seen and heard, like, if a teacher isn't seen and heard, like, how do you think that kids are going to be seen or heard? They're not, because that gets passed down. It's just a ripple effect. It's the same thing over and over again. And the people who are in the education system who aren't an administrator or a teacher are more often than not even been in the classroom, which is so sad to know. Like when I look at who's like making decisions for education in Florida, I'm like, you weren't even a teacher. You don't even know what it looks like to have a child crying because they've failed to test, or a child who can't even bear to read because they're embarrassed in front of the class. I think that the one main thing that I think is wrong with education is the mental health aspect of it is ignored so heavily. Like there's no attention paid to the actual student. And of course that's hard. Like you have 25, sometimes people have more than that, 25 students in their classroom. That's a lot of attention to be paid to each child. But I think like if we were able to give those resources to teachers to be able to feel seen and heard and understood themselves, then they would have the energy to be able to do that for their students. Because this is something that I taught as a workshop, was filling up your cup. You can't fill a cup that from an empty cup. You can't pour anything. There's nothing to pour. So then you're empty, pouring into something else that's empty, that is like thirsting for just a drop of water, and there's nothing there. You can't fill it up. So the higher up level isn't filling up the teachers in the way that they need to be, so they can serve students in the way that they need to be. And also, like, sometimes I think that it's forgotten that like school is an escape for some students. Some students come from these like broken homes, or they come from nothing, and all they have is school. That's their one meal for the day. It's their like 8 hours of, sometimes they get to play and talk to their friends, or if they don't, sometimes they don't have friends and they just want to talk to their teacher. They want to talk to somebody who can be there for them, and that's not given enough time. And I think like incorporating things that like make learning fun as well, like that's important. Like how you talk about makerspace, we never did that. We never did any of that. I mean, we did I know we did some of that like when I was in fourth grade when we like did stuff with like food. I remember doing like math. And that was like my favorite time to do math is that we got M&Ms or
Yeah.
like Skittles or like something like that.
Mhm.
And we got to like play with it and touch it and like actually feel math in our hands. And then when you get into higher grade levels, you don't do that anymore because that's not how you're going to do it in college. So, which is also incorrect. And I was talking with Jake about this last night about how I'm like, there's so many things that they say we're going to do in college that you don't, that aren't true.
Yeah.
So like, there's no connection of grade levels either. There's no person that's like talking about what actually does happen in college or high school or middle school or lower or elementary school, primary school, all that stuff. Nobody know that. Do they really know? Because all the things I was told that were going to happen in high school weren't even close to happening. And then all the things that they said that I was going to need in college did not happen. So I think that's another thing is the miscommunication is something that's lacking. But like, why would you want to communicate outside of work when all you have to do all day is work? There's no time to do any of that because you're not being treated well. So, I mean, I know that was like a combined
No, it wasn't.
mesh of things that are
No.
wrong, but
No, I hear you. This is what I hear. Like that. We don't give kids the opportunity. First of all, the biggest one, we don't give them the opportunity. We don't give them time. We don't give them time to reflect. We don't give them time to learn from their mistakes. We don't give them time to talk about what they've gained. We don't make it relevant. Instead of saying, this is what's going to happen and whatever, that's a fear. Again, using fear to dictate what you're doing instead of relevance, what really is occurring or what we really do need to know and why we need to know it. And we don't give enough attention to letting kids play and touch things, move things, hands-on things, take things apart, put things together, manipulate things. We're not giving enough attention to that. And that's the way that some kids learn. And a lot of people learn that way, but we don't give enough time to that. So those are the things that I mainly got out of what you were saying.
And even like recognizing how they learn, because like there are the kids that they take notes and they are good to go, and that's good for them. But I think like the differentiation of the child from how you're teaching it and allowing that, because I mean, I even remember thinking about like having homework that said you had to show your work in this certain way. Why? I'm giving you the answer.
So why
can't I just do it in this way that makes sense in my brain? It's okay. It makes sense for Johnny to do it this way, but it doesn't make sense for me to do it this way. So why can't I just do it in the way that makes sense for my brain? I think that is an important thing, is seeing the differences in each student. And then I think the biggest thing is also like mental health. There's no mental health resources in schools that are actually safe for students or for teachers. Is another thing, is that like we have guidance counselors. What about like somebody to just support the teachers?
Emotionally.
Do we ever think about that?
Mentally,
because there's nobody, not the principal, not to go to your boss and talk to them about something you're struggling with. Like, and of course you have your colleagues, but like a professional person that can be there to help you in whatever you're going through. Doesn't even have to be in the classroom. Like that should be something that we also have.
No, I think that's a great idea. I think that is an excellent idea to have in schools, all schools, a mental health counselor for teachers, and not even just for students, but for teachers. I think that makes total sense. I also think it's important for kids to have that metacognitive ability to know how they learn. That was a big deal to me, especially after getting my master's. I learned a lot about multiple intelligence, Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence, and wanting kids to understand how they think and how they have different smarts, we used to call it, and like putting things in place so they had some choices in showing what they know. But you're right. I don't see that all over the place. I didn't see it in every classroom. I know that wasn't your experience in all situations. Okay. So do you feel like you fully expressed the things that were wrong, or do you have more to say?
I feel like there's always more to say, but like that's, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the main gist of it for sure.
Okay. So now I want to talk about some things that you think are right. But before we talk about that, I want to know from, I don't know if that's the right order. I want to know like a bird's eye view of things that you noticed about teaching from your perspective.
Like that were good, you mean? Or just like all in all?
All maybe all in all.
Okay. Well, I'll start with like what I think is right, even though I think that's a little bit harder to express, which you can add to the list of what is wrong is not knowing what to say is right. But I think that there certainly are teachers who dedicate themselves to students. And like, I think that that was like very prevalent for me, like watching you as a teacher. Like, there was never like a time where I was like, oh, she doesn't care. Like, you always cared. And like, I mean, it was sad that you had to bring stuff home with you, but that's how much you cared about that. And a lot of teachers do feel like that. So I think that like I think that's right. I think that caring about students is something that is hopefully still at least somewhat common in certain people. Um, I mean, I think that there are some schools that have caught on a little bit more to like brain breaks.
Mhm.
I think that that's important. That's something that I missed out on in my own high school slash middle school, that they started when I graduated, is they like allowed a brain break. So when we used to have like that 30 minutes to like walk around, we had
Yeah.
to go on the walk
Yeah.
um, for exercise reasons. Then they turned it into the brain break where you could listen to music or you could talk with your friends that you don't have classes with and stuff like that. And I
So
think that there
some
are,
decompression time, which I think is
yeah.
important. Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think there are some schools and classrooms that incorporate that.
Yes, for
Um,
sure.
so
So,
like I
so
think
not so
that's
nothing
good.
really overall, nothing that
No.
jumps out at you overall. It's really comes down to specific classrooms that or
Yeah.
specific teachers that have made it all right for you,
Yeah.
and maybe some things that you saw. Um, so I
So
think
that's
you're right.
sad.
I think
Yeah.
it's really sad. I do. I think it's really sad. So what do you like? So from like growing up with a teacher for a mom, like what are the things? What are the pros and cons of that?
I think the number one thing that people say are the pros is that you get summers off and that you get to spend time. But yeah, like just as you kind of laughed, I was just talking about this last night. I'm like, they don't get summers off.
Yeah.
They're just not paid for that time that they work. I'm like, have you ever walked into a classroom and it be completely blank and there be no lesson plan or no plan for the back to school night? And I asked that to my boyfriend. He said, well, no. And I'm like, who do you think does that? The
Yeah.
teacher over
Yeah.
the summer. I'm like, I can't even count the amount of times I went in with you
Yeah.
over the summer.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun as a kid because it was an empty school and that's where I went and whatever. But as a teacher, you don't even get that time off. So,
No.
like, that's what you think is a pro, but you really have to set up and prepare and stuff. So, I think that's a con is that, like, it's kind of misleading in
Mhm.
that way. I think I can't even say there's any pros to like benefits, at least in Florida. It's
Yeah.
very, very poor.
Mhm.
And that so that is a con like of pay and health benefits and even like retirement benefits are not good. So
Mhm.
like that's something that nobody looks at because you have it, it's just sucky.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that's a con of being a teacher. I think that the main pro, at least if I were a teacher, would be that you get to do your best to enlighten a child every day or every once in a while as best as you can.
Yeah.
And because I hope that's the goal of becoming a teacher
Yeah.
from the get-go, is to be with students and to teach them the best of your ability. Of course, like I said before, sometimes it's not allowed, which is an outrageous thing to say, that you're not allowed to enlighten a student. But I think that's probably the only pro at this time in education, is being there for students that really need you and really need certain things, and that you're able to provide that for them. But otherwise, there are so many other cons
No,
of
that it
being
makes
a
it, yeah,
teacher,
that it makes a
because you
difference.
have to fight every day.
Yeah.
Every day you have to fight to be able to teach, to do your job.
No, you're right.
So I think that's another huge con.
Do you think that you came up with this list because you've seen this from other teachers, or do you think it's just what you've seen with me?
I think it's both. I was very close to a lot of my teachers throughout my whole entire career in education. Like I was close with my elementary school teachers as I got older, who,
Mhm.
like, it's not like they didn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
And even as I got older in middle school and high school, I like felt like I had like a friendly relationship with multiple of my teachers who were open and telling me their own struggles as well. So, of
So,
course, like, I see it from your perspective because I see it from the home perspective, but
yes.
I also have heard it from many, many teachers.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. So what do you think were like, if you had to say without me telling you, like, what do you think would be, what do you, if you looked at me and teaching, what would you say made me happy about teaching? I mean, I'm just curious. I'm curious what you think.
hmm I think, the students, just being able to, like, see a student read for the first time, or like find a book that they love, or like enjoy science like they've never have before, or like coming in. And I even remember students who would come in every day and walk up to you and be like, let me tell you what happened yesterday at home. And and she would specifically want to tell you a story every single morning at the hello at the door. And as annoying as that could get on occasion, it was something that, like, made you smile. Or a student hugging you every day, like those things. And that all comes down to the students. And that's what you do it for. Is
Yeah,
you don't do it for the big man, like, at the top, like,
yeah,
you do
no,
it
you're
for
right.
them. So I think that would be your answer. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right. You are right. Did you notice a difference when I liked my administrator, my
Oh,
principal?
yes, 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 yes. I wanted you to leave the school system when you didn't, because it was like a switch was turned off, because the the administrator that you had, that respected you and did listen to what you needed. Of course, he couldn't always help
Yeah,
because he's a human.
yeah,
But when that switched, it was a complete different story. You were unhappy, and it was hard for you to even find the joy in the students, which made it hard on the students, I'm sure. And that's
yeah,
not your fault. Like, and I'm sure it might not even be the administrator's fault. It might be the person above them. Like, who knows what was going on? But I think that makes a huge difference when you trust your administrator, and you can go to them with the issues, and you can trust that they're going to help you to solve it, and not just say it'll be fixed and then
yeah,
it doesn't.
yeah,
That they actually guide you through the process. They're a leader, not just a boss.
yeah.
Which, shout out to Jennifer Hoffer, who has a podcast, who has an episode specifically on being a leader, and not a boss. That's where that came from in my mind.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes a
that's
difference.
true.
No, it
Yeah,
definitely
being a
makes a
leader
difference.
versus a boss is important, because you
For
need
sure.
somebody to go to. So I think, yeah, it
Absolutely.
definitely makes a difference.
What are the things that you think were difficult?
Like, for you,
Yes.
oh, where do I begin? Um, I think it definitely started to go downhill when new administration came into play, because you didn't have somebody that did trust your word, and then that was a little bit of like a loss as well, and nobody really acknowledged that loss. There was no like grieving period. It was just kind of like a switch, and it was a huge switch too for the whole school. So I think that was really hard to watch. And then when you changed positions to an SSS, it was like there was no training at all. It was like you were thrown into the fire, and it was like, here's a small glass of water, try to pour out this forest fire with it. Like, like, so
true.
I think that was horrible, because I think training is another thing that teachers don't get, like, and that I'm learning more. Yeah. So like, I'm learning that more too, as I am a VA, is hearing about like how when people were first a teacher, that they had no idea what they were doing because they didn't have the help that they needed. So, and even when you're not just first a teacher, but you're first changing over to a new position, you don't know.
No, you're right. When I first started teaching, they did have a mentor program. And so you had a mentor teacher that helped you but that was in 1997. It didn't continue. And then when I got nationally certified, part of your bonus was to mentor other teachers, which I did. They compensated me. And also I like that. I like doing that kind of stuff. Well, then they wanted you to keep doing it, but they weren't going to pay you. Well, that felt so insulting and so much like they just didn't care about you or your time. And I felt angry by that. So it made me not want to, because I'm like, how dare you like ask that of me? Because it's very time consuming. And so then we stopped having this mentor, program, and we stopped giving new teachers help. And so that's when the whole idea of everybody must do the same thing because we might have a new teacher on the team. That is not the answer. That's a strive for mediocrity, in my opinion. That's not the answer. What about going back to mentorship? What about compensating people for that and creating partnerships where people help one another, but you actually are compensating the person that's taking their time to do that? All right, I go on a tangent on that. Okay, so is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
I don't think so. I think that I honestly, and I know this is going to sound aggressive at first, is that like, I hope the education system does fail, so that way it can be rebuilt into something that it needs to be, and not just that it can be, because I think it could be so much more than what it is now. And I think that I also very strongly believe that failure is not a bad thing, that I think that it can be a good thing. And I think it's what the education system needs currently, is to fail and rebuild, because it needs to be rebuilt by people who are passionate and still have the spark in their eye, because it's being run by people who just are keeping the gears turning and nothing else is going on. So
what are some things that we need to do differently? And with that, like, have a closing thing that you would like to say that we could do. What would be some important things to consider in the rebuilding?
I think important things to consider in the rebuilding of education would be considering overall everyone's mental health and their contentness and joy in learning, and including different styles and differentiation of styles of learning for each student, and seeing each person for what their needs are, and not seeing each person for an overall need. And I also think that testing needs to be reevaluated in a different way, because some kids need more time than others, and you shouldn't have to go through this whole process just to get extra time on a test. So I think testing needs to be completely re-looked at for what's best for the student to actually show what they know, because it's not showing what they know right now. It's showing that they're scared and rushing through to get it done. So I think those are a few key things. But overall, I think it needs to be focused on the mental health of each individual, teachers, administration included, and the students, of course, and then seeing each kid for who they are and allowing them a space to learn for what best suits them as a person.
Yeah. Ah, Emily, thank you. Thank you for coming on and having this conversation and helping us see, it through a different lens. And sometimes it's hard to do that when you're in the midst of it. I will say from personal experience, I feel like it's easier when you step out and you see, you're like, whoa, it's like so much dysfunction that you don't realize it sometimes. And I do think it's interesting. And you provided an interesting perspective. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. And I do really quickly want to say too, to all teachers listening to this as well, that like you're doing a great job and that you can take a breath and see what you're doing and please keep going, because you can do it. And if you can't handle what's happening right now, then do it in a different way. Yeah. It doesn't have to look the same. Yeah. So, and I also am grateful to all the teachers that I had that helped me to get to where I am today too. Yeah. Including you, my ultimate teacher.
Why, thank you. And thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for meeting my very special daughter. Thank you for listening to some of the hard things that she has noticed and observed in her short time in education. And, you often wonder what they pick up on. Like, what do they see? How much of that pain do they realize? I think about that. I think about that for our students too. Like, how much do they see that? How does that impact them? I think it has to. I think it has to impact them. And that's why I feel like I agree with the sense that we need to do it differently. And yeah, I hope we will. This one tired teacher is ready for a long, long summer nap. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.